Welcome to this episode of Horrific History and Hauntings. I'm Beth.
And I'm Ramy. We're your hosts, here to talk about the stories that the history books ignore.
From horrific epidemics and ghostly hauntings to the catastrophes and tragic events that have sickened humanity.
Indeed. Did anything happen today in history, Beth?
Nothing I felt was entertaining.
Just so you know, we're recording immediately after the first episode to make sure we have a backlog.
Yeah.
So the episode you heard before this, be it a week or 2 weeks old, was the same
day.
Also, nothing interesting happening.
Yeah.
TikTok's gone. How is that going in the future?
What do you mean?
I'm asking our future listeners how that's going. It'll be weeks away before they hear this.
What are you doing when you go to the bathroom?
Watching Instagram Reels. Have you learned Mandarin yet? Is Red Note caught on, or has it been banned? What are we talking about today?
Oh. In this episode, we're going to be covering John Wayne Gacy.
Not a very nice fellow. Actually, he seemed nice. That was the thing.
Yeah, he seemed nice. He described himself at one point as 4 different people at one time.
Multiple personality disorder, or just saying that?
Just saying that, I believe.
Oh.
It was the contractor, the clown pogo, the politician, and the killer, whom he referred to as Jack.
That's such a popular name for killers.
And pirates.
Which can be killers.
And people that weren't allowed to get on the door or wardrobe or whatever it was in Titanic. As you all know, this one is going to have a content warning. So it's going to be a multi-parter, first of all. It's going to have disturbing content about sexual assault and murder, particularly of young men and teenage boys. So
you have been warned.
You have been warned. I will try to word it, if at all possible, if I can think of any way. And I don't know if I would say
a less offensive way to say
a
things.
Less offensive, but either way you look at it, it is a horrific, offensive topic. Like I said, you've been warned. We're going to talk about his childhood first.
Was it traumatic in some way?
In a way, yeah. Even in his younger years, he displayed some red flags that the people around him should have noticed. He was born in Chicago, Illinois on March 17th, 1942. He was the only son and middle child of John Stanley Gacy and Marion Robinson. His father physically and verbally abused him. He expected his son to be interested in sports and other masculine type activities, which Gacy had no interest in, and he was actually prevented from participating in many due to health problems. His father's verbal abuse included calling him homophobic slurs and a girl. As it often is with many abused children, this treatment caused John to become desperate for his father's approval. He also claimed to have been sexually abused in his childhood. He said he was molested in a field by a mentally challenged 15-year-old when he was just 4 years old.
I can barely remember a lot of things about 4 years.
Yeah.
I remember when you were born and I was 4 years old. I tried to rip your belly button. Remains off.
That's nice. 3 years later, he described being sexually abused by a family member who also happened to be a family friend, not a family member, who also happened to be a contractor. This family friend would take him on rides in his truck and to job sites. He would use those opportunities to molest John. He also mentioned that he was afraid to report this sexual abuse to his parents because he didn't want his father to be angry with him and to blame him for it. And at around the age of 6, one of those red flags pops up. He began stealing his mother's underwear, which was later discovered in bags buried in the backyard. Later on, some of his future victims were found with their underwear stuffed down their throats.
Huh.
So I don't know if it came from that or not. When Gacy was around 12 years old, his mother found her underwear in his possession, and as punishment, she forced him to wear the underwear.
Okay.
I don't see how that was
I've heard
helpful.
that before from different things. I don't know if it came from this particular story, though. It might have been the origins of it, for all I know.
Yeah. While John was the victim of much of the abuse from his father, he wasn't the only victim. When John was around 2 years old, during a normal family dinner, John Sr. suddenly decided to throw a handful of food in his wife's face and then proceeded to punch her in the face. So she ran out into the street screaming and fell to the ground, where a neighbor rushed out to help and called the police while warning John Sr. to stay away from her. So John Sr. then returned to the house, grabbed a gun, and then left. Marion took the kids and stayed with her sister-in-law for several days after that, but eventually she did end up going back. When John Gacy was 10, the family moved to a new house with a basement that his father became very fond of. It was pretty much his man cave.
I'm a basement person, too.
I'm not. He would spend the majority of the time there and forbid anyone from entering. He went as far as to lock the door, which caused some problems when it came to dinner time because John Sr. demanded that no one was to begin eating dinner until he was sitting at the table. However, any attempts to call him from the basement were met with angry outbursts, and at least one of them would get a beating from him.
Wow.
Just for calling him to dinner because they wanted to eat and they weren't allowed to. John's health problems with his heart, as I mentioned earlier, created challenges that limited his ability to participate in physical activity. This also led to him gaining weight. At 11 years old, he began experiencing blackouts. And despite the repeated hospitalizations, his father would dismiss these episodes and accuse him of faking them. He would also get bullied at school and then would have to go home to get bullied by his dad.
So he was troubled, obviously.
Yeah. Eventually, doctors found a blood clot in John Gacy's brain. He was treated successfully, but was forced to miss many days of school. Even during this recovery process, his father continued to inflict physical abuse on him. He was unable to keep up with this schoolwork after missing so many days, which led to him dropping out, which gave his father yet another reason to bully his son. In a gesture that might have initially seemed supportive, John Sr. helped John buy a car. However, it soon became another weapon that was used to hold against him. After so many fights about the car, John finally escaped his toxic home environment at the age of 18 by moving to Las Vegas. So now we're moving up. As a young adult, John Wayne Gacy became active in the Democratic politics. He took a position as an assistant precinct captain, and he proved to do very well at it. His charismatic personality and strong communication skills helped to get people to like him. However, his father strongly disapproved of his political activities and would criticize him for being a Democrat. I don't think it would have mattered either way. I think his dad would have criticized him no matter what.
I'm pretty sure, a lot of families, especially nowadays, disown folks for their political views.
Yeah. Ain't none of my business. I don't care. During his time in Las Vegas, John became ill and had to be hospitalized. He was unable to afford the medical expenses, so he used his charm and persuasiveness to get a job as an ambulance driver. He conveniently forgot to tell them he was not qualified for the job. When it was discovered he didn't have a high school diploma, which was one of the requirements, he was fired.
Oh no, fair enough. You're taking care of people's lives.
I think we know he was not doing
that.
After being fired from the ambulance job, he worked nights at a mortuary as an attendant.
It's less, what is the word I'm hunting for? Risky to folks' lives?
Mm-hmm. He slept on a cot near the embalming room, so he apparently stayed there when he was working.
That's okay.
Yeah. Near the end of his time there, rumors were spread that he had
defiled,
touched, fondled a teenage boy's corpse.
Yeah, I knew that was coming.
Yeah. And this was apparently his confirmation of his attraction to teenage boys. So he called his mother and asked her to return home and quit his job.
Can I come home, Mommy? I've discovered something bad.
Yeah. Once he returned home, he graduated from a local business college. How he did that without graduating from high school, I do not know. He began a successful career as a shoe salesman, and again, his natural charisma and salesmanship led to him being promoted to management in the Springfield, Illinois. Then he joined the JCs, which is also known as the Junior Chamber. It's an organization focused on leadership training and civic engagement.
I just know it as Johnson City, so.
He rapidly advanced in the JCs. He became the president of the Springfield chapter in 1965, and he successfully recruited new members. So this led to his recognition as one of Illinois' top members that same year.
He's moving on up for a man who has done fairly poorly up until now.
Mm-hmm. In the year prior, Gacy met Marilyn Myers while working at the shoe store. They were quickly engaged within 9 months. Her family were the owners of many KFC franchises in Waterloo, Iowa.
Iowa.
I
forgot how you said that. Iowa. Sounds like an alien planet.
Her father, Fred, offered John the opportunity to manage 3 of his KFC franchises. After accepting this offer, they relocated to Waterloo. John was also an active member in the Waterloo community, and he continued his involvement with the JCs there. And again, he did well in this division. In 1967, he was honored as the outstanding vice president of the Iowa JCs. He also earned a seat on the organization's board of directors.
Good for him.
He used this position to recruit new members to the organization by hosting crazy parties at hotels.
Of course.
They usually involved him showing illegal porn to the potential new members. Then he would organize orgy parties pretty much with sex workers.
I don't know anything about corporate lifestyle, so maybe.
He would then use this all for blackmail.
Oh, that sounds more corporate.
Yes, he would threaten to expose the involvement in these activities to the spouses, pretty much forcing them into the JCs, I believe. In 1967, Gacy and his wife started a family. Their firstborn was a son, and the following year, a daughter was born. While his father finally began to show him a little respect after this.
Wife and children.
Yes.
And now he could spoil the grandchildren.
Yes. Around this time, Gacy's interest in young men and boys became more noticeable.
Noticeable to him or just to everybody?
I think both, maybe. His confidence began to grow too much into arrogance. He even insisted that his employees at the KFC franchises address him as the Colonel.
I mean, I'm digging it. That's pretty cool.
No, like...
I run a KFC. You call me the Colonel.
With this confidence growing into arrogance, he also decided to transform his basement into a hangout spot for teenage boys. Yeah, remember his dad's basement?
Yeah.
I don't know if that was connected or what, but he enticed these teenage boys to hang out with him in the basement by putting a pool table down there, and he would then present to them porn.
Oh, I present to you porn.
Yeah. And then he would get them high and drunk, and then sexually assault them.
Yeah, that's less funny.
Yeah. In August 1967, Gacy hired Donald, a 15-year-old boy, to do some work around his house. He was able to hire him easily because Donald's father was also a member of the JCs. So that's, I guess, how they connected and knew each other. Gacy got him to go down to the basement where they watched porn and drank alcohol. And then Gacy sexually assaulted the 15-year-old Donald. He continued this process of hiring different boys and doing horrible things to them after getting them intoxicated. And he went as far as to claim he was a researcher conducting a scientific study and would offer them $50 per session to participate. In March 1968, the truth about Gacy's actions began to surface. Donald confided in his father about his awful experience while working for Gacy, and Donald's father contacted the police. Around the same time, another victim who was a 16-year-old boy came forward with his own horrific account of Gacy sexually abusing him. Gacy was arrested on sodomy charges and attempted assault on the 16-year-old boy, but he denied any wrongdoing. Gacy eventually changed his story later pretty much to blame the victims by claiming that these sexual encounters were consensual. Then he tried to say he was being set up because Donald's father wanted to prevent him from being elected president of the JCs. Pretty much everybody my fault. Gacy was desperate to avoid the consequences of his actions, so before his court date, he hired 18-year-old Russell for $300. This was to intimidate Donald into not showing up for court. Russell was
going to intimidate Donald.
Russell managed to get Donald to follow him into a secluded area in the woods.
This poor kid is just so trusting.
And then he assaulted him with pepper spray and punched him in the face. But Donald managed to run away and immediately went to the police. Russell was quickly caught by police and immediately confessed that Gacy was the mastermind who hired him to attack Donald and, the reason why, which resulted in Gacy being charged with conspiracy to commit assault in addition to the previous charges.
Caused this yourself, sir.
Yeah. He ended up pleading guilty to the charge of sodomy, and he was sentenced to 10 years in prison. While there, he acted well behaved. He got his high school diploma.
Finally.
Yes, and he became the head cook and pretty much altogether just stayed out of trouble. They liked him.
That happens a lot with these stories.
Yeah. Gacy's father passed away from cirrhosis
of the liver.
Of the liver, yeah.
Yeah, I knew where you were going with it.
On December 27th, 1969. And Gacy was denied permission to get out of prison long enough to attend the funeral. His wife, Marilyn, filed for divorce, so he decided to declare that she and his children were dead to him. Father of the Year award.
Pretty sure she don't care at this point, but
yeah.
Sure.
Probably for the best.
Yeah.
Despite having a 10-year sentence, Gacy was released from prison in October 1971.
Good behavior, sir.
Yes, he only served 2 years.
Very, very good behavior.
Yes, that was the reasoning. He was placed on probation for 12 months and returned to Chicago to live with his mother, which was one of the conditions of the probation. He worked first as a cook and then as a contractor to save money. And with his mother's financial help, Gacy purchased a house and she moved in with him. It wasn't long before Gacy returned to his bad behavior, though. February 1971, he lured a teenage boy to his home and attempted to rape him. The boy got away and reported it to police.
That happens a lot in these stories too.
Yeah. This led to Gacy being charged with sexual assault once again. But the charges were dismissed when the victim failed to appear in court. And this managed to have slipped through the cracks. Gacy's probation officer was never informed of it. So he pretty much got away with it completely.
That's before the age of proper computering.
Yeah. On January 2nd, 1972, Gacy encountered 16-year-old Timothy Jack McCoy, who was sleeping at a Chicago bus station. Gacy took advantage of this opportunity and offered Timothy a ride and a place to stay for the night, with the promise that he would drive him back to the station the next day. He managed to gain Timothy's trust with his smooth talking on the ride there. And then Gacy claimed that he woke up to find Timothy standing in the doorway with a knife, which made him feel threatened.
Yeah.
He then attacked the boy by strangling and stabbing him. Gacy said he went to the kitchen to clean the knife, only to find a prepared breakfast of eggs and bacon.
Oh.
According to Gacy, Timothy had made him breakfast and then entered the bedroom, I guess carelessly, still holding the knife to wake him up to eat.
Instead, he got strangled and stabbed.
If that's even true. We just have Gacy's story to go by. Gacy then said, as he listened to Timothy gasping for air, he had the most amazing orgasm of his life. He said that's when it dawned on him that death was pretty much the greatest enjoyment, excitement to him. Timothy Jack McCoy was the first victim of John Wayne Gacy. He was the first to be placed in the crawl space of Gacy's house. And sadly, he was only known as the Greyhound busboy for a while they attempted to identify him, which took a really long time.
Isn't there people still working on some of these?
I believe so.
Yeah, I watched a documentary not too long ago.
Yeah.
That's the case of a lot of these mass murderers, serial killers. A lot of them don't get identified, especially if they've been put in one big area.
Yep. And that's the end of part 1. I figured that was the first death.
And then we can continue on with the many more to come.
Yep.
I'm not happy about it. I'm just saying that.
Yeah. Just so you all know, it will be in the show notes, but among the sources, I'm just going to put the ones that aren't websites for this multi-part episode is a Peacock documentary, John Wayne Gacy, Devil in Disguise, the book John Wayne Gacy, Defending a Monster, which was actually written by Gacy's attorney, Sam L. Amirante. I can't remember if I got it on Audible or Kindle because I used both of those at the time.
It's on
and
both,
I've had
probably.
these notes for quite a while. I just had needed to type them up. So one of those two. And then there's also the book Killer Clown that was written by Terry Sullivan.
That's a good name. Thanks for listening. Thanks for telling me the early parts of Gacy. See, I don't remember the early story. I remember him getting the charges, which is all the documentaries I ever seen covered. They covered the charges.
Documentaries don't have that much. You really have to look into books.
Yeah. They covered the early
the
charges, but they didn't really go too deep into them.
Yeah.
Not even a lot about the parent.
Yeah, there wasn't that much in the documentary. The books had more information, obviously.
Well, if you like what you heard here, we're part of the Gruesome Gaming Group Podcast Network. We have 2 other podcasts. We have Leveling Duo. It's a podcast where me and my sister here, or me and my friend, one of my friends, Dakota, or somebody else, talks about video games we really enjoy. We don't come out with it very often now because we kind of ran out of video games until a good new one comes out. But I'm thinking about starting it back up again. There's some things that's happened here lately. Also, Beth might have more of a hand in some of the stuff related to that because she's gaming more. We have Brother Knows Quest, a podcast where I tell Beth here about tabletop role-playing games. A different one each episode. We haven't recorded one in a while because of a lot of the stuff we talked about in the last episode. Hopefully, by next week, there'll be a new one. If you want to find those, there'll be a Linktree link in the description. It will take, the first link in that Linktree will be our podcast's hosted website. It'll have all of our podcasts there. You can find them there, or just Google them or look them up in your podcast app of choice. We're also on YouTube. I've created a new YouTube channel for video game related stuff that me and Beth could be playing or streaming or just posting videos of us playing or talking. It hasn't got anything on it yet. Actually, by the time this episode comes out, there might be something on it. I'm still waiting on parts for the PC that I got to come in. It was supposed to be in today, actually, but the snow has prevented that too. There's all our social links. Find us there. Of course, there's no TikTok. Still curious how that's going 2 weeks in the future. And there will be a Facebook group for the Horrific History and Hauntings listed there in the Linktree link. Below all the Linktree stuff. Oh, also use those links to reach out to us if you want on the socials. We'd like to hear from you. Give us things to cover or tell us a story we're allowed to share or not allowed to share. If you just want to talk to us, that's fine too. Thanks for the reviews. Nice to get those, even if they're not nice ones. We have seen a lot of nice ones. I don't think we've seen but 1 or 2 mediocre to bad ones. And that's fair. Fair, if it ain't for you, it ain't for you. And there's also emails below the Linktree link. You can send anything you want there, and me and Beth will see it. Let us know if we're allowed to use your last name if you want us to tell a story or read it out. We collect the reviews and eventually read those out, and we'll use a first name unless otherwise stated. We can use a last name too. Below all that is a link to leave a tip or a donation to help us keep the podcast hosted. It does cost money, and it does help us. Thank you for using that if you use it. Other than that, that's about all I got. Share, talk to people about what we're doing here, and see if anybody else wants to hear about these weird stories we go on about.
Or any ideas or stories of your own.
Yeah, we like to hear them. Thanks again, Beth, and thank you for listening. I've been Remy.
And I'm Beth.
This has been HH&H. Bye-bye.